Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Donaldson, and I have the honor of moderating this panel this afternoon. And we're talking about a subject that I'm very passionate about supplier development and its importance in manufacturing within South Africa. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves in a minute, but before we do that, let's just look at what supplier development is. Official definitions say it's aligned to supplier relationship management, but it's more than relationship management. It's a process of working with suppliers on a one-on-one basis to improve their performance for the benefit of the buying organization. And I think that's very important because it's a relationship, so it shouldn't only benefit one party. If I look at the benefits to the buying organization, it should improve transparency and collaboration, it should improve quality and reliability of production and supply, it should include responsiveness, should result in increased customer satisfaction, increased supplier diversity, it should decrease the risk to the buyer and should decrease lead times and prices to the buyer. But as I mentioned, this is a relationship, so we want benefits on both sides. For the seller, I think it should result in increased sales, increased relationships, and increased sustainability. But obviously on both sides, there are also negatives as well, and we need to look at those. We're very fortunate in our panel to have Fazila, who's been part of some supplier development initiatives, and I'm sure she'll talk about some of these things. So with that, I'm going to start and let the panel introduce themselves. Fazila, if we can start with you. Thank you.
Good morning all, and thank you for this opportunity. It humbles me when I have the honor to share my journey. My name is Fazila. I work for I own a company by the name of K9 Pet Foods. We've been part of a supply development program with Woolworths since 2017 that we started. But before that, that was a long journey before we even got to a point where we could supply them with their with our first product. We have had the pleasure of actually moving on, and in 2019 we started with Pick as well, and being part of their enterprise development program as well. There's a lot that I can share on my journey, and as we continue, I will try and share those moments, the challenges, but the good and the bad with being part of a program like this. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Fazila. Des, shall we go to you?
Thank you. My name is Des Miller. I'm an energy specialist, and I've also had the pleasure of working in the major construction of coal-fired plants, gas turbines, renewables, and nuclear energy projects. My big focus today is really on the local industrialization of nuclear energy projects in manufacturing, engineering, material supply, and of course, construction. And the biggest challenge that we are looking at is making sure that we have an inclusive program where transformation is adopted and taken quite seriously in these programs. And on that end, I've just recently launched a nuclear build platform for our industry to align the industry to those opportunities.
Thanks, Des.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Eustace Mashimbia. I'm from Proudly South African. And what Proudly South African is a buy local campaign, which is a global phenomenon. The concept of getting those who are responsible for buying to choose locally made products whenever they make purchasing decisions is a global phenomenon. In fact, if you look at the US, I see the outgoing administration was quite big in terms of protectionism measures. But interestingly, the deputy president, they knew the incoming deputy president, Kamala Harris, had a whole Twitter thread a few days ago speaking about the importance of buying local, of supporting small businesses, ensuring that they grow. And so it's all about that. And that's what Proudly South African is about. We are there to ensure that whether you're buying for the private sector or the public sector, while you are buying as an ordinary consumer, that we start changing your buying patterns so that they favor locally made products. And that's what we do on a day-to-day basis, is to increase the uptake of locally made products in order to contribute to the growth of the economy, the creation of jobs, but also when you get the concept of supply development, access to markets is a critical component of it. And so that's what the Buy Local campaign seeks to do, is to provide markets by ensuring that those who make their products locally get supported. But I'll talk at great length about it during the question and answer session. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Eustace. Been asked to look at 4 specific, get a chance to answer those questions, and then we'll end up with a closeout from our side, and there will be some chance to do a Q&A later via the chat functions as well. Okay, so the first question is, what are the critical supply development elements for manufacturing companies? And I think this is quite a hard space, because we've got generic supplier development, but then we also, because we're part of Manufacturing Indaba, we're trying to say what's different in manufacturing. So Fazila, let's start with you, and then Des and Eustace will get to you afterwards. Thank you.
If I've done a little bit of research of when I started the business, and understanding what does it take to start or to start something like this. And what I found, it was that 70 to 80% of all businesses that start up fails within the first 2 years. And that certainly speaks to the fact that there is going to need some support outside of the normal support that you get. I mean, there's the funds part, there is the small business starting up and suddenly have to start doing business with a big corporate that's been involved for a long time, running their business. They've got established systems, and here I come starting up, and I want to tell Woolworths or any retailer or any big corporate, I can produce this product for you. And yes, they're all very excited at that stage and saying, oh, yes, we like the product, and the buying team get involved. And then we say, okay, now how are we going to fund this? And yes, it's in the funds are important, but I think the bigger issue here is it's essential to find the right partner, because what I have found is this is like a marriage. I don't necessarily think if we don't have the same goal set from the word go, and understanding from the corporate or on the program itself, it's going to be a problem, because yes, they will supply you the funds, but there is such a lot that they need to do. I mean, just starting off this whole thing, it's such an unknown and unproven territory that we entered a few years ago. And a lot of companies are committed to do an enterprise development and supply development program. But I think even like from my experience, both myself and Woolworths in this case, I think we didn't quite understand what we were getting ourselves into. I think we were very much in love at the beginning until we actually got to a stage where we realized, okay, now this is reality, in the sense of that things are not happening. So it's not just the funds, it's a complete commitment. It's a long-term commitment from both parties to understand. It's an overall commitment from all departments within the corporate company. It needs dedicated staff to be able to do this. If you're not going to do that, I can tell you it's not going to work. And you both need to admit from word go that there's going to have to be some changes and adjustment from both sides, because you cannot start a program, give a supplier, a small supplier funds and say, okay, go out and set up your facility of your manufacturing space and start supplying me in 6 months' time. You need to guide them to exactly what it is you want. For instance, in our case, they were importing the products that they've asked us to start supplying them. But it was an established company. It was a company that's been running for 30 odd years that they were buying from. So it was a whole lot easier because they've done all their little setup challenges has been addressed 30 years ago or 25 years ago. They've done all of that. And South Africa, the volume that they were taking from the overseas company was 2-3% of their total international volumes, where in my from where I was coming from, Woolworths was my biggest, and only it was 80% of my business. So I needed to ensure that everything was correct, and I was completely dependent on Woolworths taking my product. So there's that commitment of ensuring that they will supply us or they will support us in getting to the quality that they require, and ensuring that we understand from a small business how their processes work in terms of as a business itself.
Thanks, Fazila. Eustace, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I think the most critical thing in a supply development program that needs to be remembered is that it's one thing to help a business, but you need to help them to a point where they also grow. And the only way they can grow is if you expand markets. So you bring them on board with a view to ensuring that you capacitate them, you get them to the right levels, like Fazila said, but that you expand the opportunities for them. And expanding them might mean exposing them to other people outside of your own value chain. So with Fazila being in Woolworths, there's other retailers out there who have this the same kind of customer, maybe different LSMs or some with different choices, but the product that is being used is probably sold at those retailers. Because I'm talking from the perspective of a buy local campaign where we advocate for the increasing of shelf space for locally made products across all retailers. So if you have a product that is sitting on the one retailer's shelf, you know that consumers are definitely buying it, because you know retailers. If consumers are not buying it, they remove it they don't even waste time. So the fact that there is uptake means that there is a loyal base of customers who already identify with the product. It satisfies the need which they have. And so as a competing retailer, it makes sense to also give it a chance, because then you know that there's a market for it. And that's what I think is critical, is for those who roll out supply development programs to be open to the fact that that product must also live on other shelves, and even instances where it's not even about retail, where as an entity, a private sector entity, you develop a product because you use it as part of your value chain. What you need to then do is expose them to other programs, and that's why as Public South African, we partner with large entities so that those companies that are part of their supply development programs can come onto Public South African. So qualifying companies that make their products locally and that render services locally, that are part of supply development programs of large entities. We take them, we bring them on board so that we then expose them to other markets. And I think that's the mark of a great supply development program, is that access to market element should not just be limited to your market, but to other markets that might be out there and that might benefit the business. Because as the business grows, there might be a need for them to produce more. And that is where the jobs come from. That is how they retain the jobs they have. That is how they create new jobs. And that is what this buy local campaign seeks to achieve. Thanks.
Thanks, Eustace. So linking back to your point earlier about demand, absolutely. Des, is there anything else that you want to add that you think is important?
Yeah. Supplier development is something that we've had for more than a decade now. And unfortunately, this whole concept, which was very good for our industry, was introduced in a constrained market, a shrinking market. And it would have been fantastic if we had really a growing market in South Africa to roll out a very strong and aggressive supply development program without having to say, well, let's constrain this part of the market so that we can build that market. It's almost like taking away from Paul to give to Peter and so forth. We should have had a very big expanding market to roll out a very good supply development program. Honestly, I think we need to take the handbrake off our industry. Now, just look at, for example, the stadiums that we built back for the World Cup 2010. It was started almost 2 years late, but South Africa rose to the challenge and we were 6 months ahead of schedule. Brazil couldn't even do that. It shows you that if South Africa is given a chance, it can do a hell of a lot. So we need to be given the opportunity to start moving forward. We're also having a power situation. We need reliable power in our industry. And, you know, this is a bit of a pet for me, being an energy specialist, but it is underpinning growth in our industry. The lack of it will basically starve it. We've seen a number of lovely programs launched by the DTI, TLIU at CSIR and so forth. What they've done for the motor industry, motor manufacturing industry is fantastic. It's globally phenomenal and it's outstanding. We've got to take that mentality into smaller opportunities. And it's not only for big industries, but also, you know, smaller industries can actually benefit from that type of approach. Skills development of artisans is absolutely key. We had a fantastic artisan program. We seem to have dropped that off and kind of lent on the private sector to develop artisans and engineers for our manufacturing industries. We need to bring that back. These are the real skills and the backbone of our country. Industry 4.0, digital transformation, is another enabler to start kicking our industry into a world-class industry. There's fantastic opportunities in project lifecycle management. Organizations like Aerosud, who manufacture various components for Boeing and Airbus and things like that, to international standards, is a good example of an organization that's embraced the 4.0, Industry 4.0, and has manufactured world-class products and is expanding as an organization. We need to start adopting world-class technology in our growth programs, and then also to start creating entrepreneurs and leaders. Leadership is the biggest challenge in industry today, and I've come out of the construction sector where we've been embattled, and it's always easy to lead an organization in good times, but it takes a very special leader to take it through some of the tough times, and we in the tough times. And this is going to bring the best out of our good leaders. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations will fail because of poor leadership and poor entrepreneurship.
Des, can I put you on the spot a little bit and ask you to bring that back to supplier development programs? So all of that stuff is really important from a greater manufacturing perspective. And I think there'll be very little that most people can disagree with. But bring that back to a supplier development program. How does that link to essential elements for supplier development in manufacturing?
Well, the development of the industry, you know, where we want to basically start an inclusive process in getting industry involved, getting opportunities for people. There are all people that have got great ideas, great products, but as Fazila said earlier on, they just don't know how to fund these projects. The opportunities are great, the products are fantastic. The buyers are ready and there for it, but how do we actually get the industry to be able to cross that bridge and fund the project and get it happening and get the products into the hands of their clients? And that's, as I said earlier on, you know, there's been a number of opportunities that the likes of the DTI and TLIU have developed. TIA is also another organization that's looking at supplier development in a very high-tech space as well. And these are always useful, but we need to start seeing how do we take some of these ideas and incubate them in good incubators and make sure that these ideas produce products and create viable organizations. and most important is employment for our industry.
Thanks, Des. I think for me, there are a couple of things that have come out of this, and Fazila, I'd love your last words on this specific question, but how then do we create that trust and create that marriage and bring that back into the supplier development agreements that we need to be signing?
I think we need commitment, and each party must have the same goals, because if you're not going to have the same goals, you're not going to make it. And that goes for everything. If you don't want to do something, and what I have found dealing with a lot of other companies since I've started this project has been a question of, but why should we do it? Why we don't need to do, we don't need to be a level 2 or level 4 BEE company. So we are white-owned business. Why should we do any of those things? And I think a lot of people miss the point about enterprise development, or for that matter, the triple BEE, what was the purpose or what was the essence of why it was started. And if big companies and corporates don't make that commitment, if they're only going to do this because they want to have a good score, then it's not going to work. You need to do this because it's the best for South Africa. It's not the best for your country, for your company to do it. It's the better. It's going to be better for all of South Africans. And if you're going to go in with that mentality that it's something that we all need to partake in, only then it will work. If you're going to go in, it's just a check, a tick on a checklist that I need to do. It's just another KPI that I need to achieve from a management or whoever is going to administer that, or from a board level point of view, that they're saying it's just another tick that we need to achieve. That's where the challenges starts becoming in, because they're going to go into it like that. If they're going to go into with the idea that this is something that we need to do, it's the commitment from the board. We've got the commitment from all different levels throughout the corporate business. If that's the attitude that they're going to go in, then it will work, because then you're going to go way above and understand to make sure that we actually achieve the ultimate goal of developing people, developing skills, and creating jobs.
It's not working. Sorry, there you go. Okay, so Des, last comment on this, then we need to, from a time perspective, move on to the next question. Okay, if you can keep it brief.
Yeah, this is a fantastic culture that we've created here in South Africa. And I've worked with one of the large construction companies where we operate across Africa. And honestly, we do the supply development in African countries where there's no demand. It's become part of our culture. It's the way we do business. We move into a country, we say, right, how are we going to work with the local industry? How are we going to create skills? How are we going to basically create craft and trade where these guys, when we leave, can actually provide subsistence for themselves, you know? And it's just become the way we do business in South Africa. In the beginning, it was a bit okay, but today it's become part of our culture. And that's been a fantastic win for us.
I think from a long-term sustainability point, Fazila made the point, it has to be something real. Otherwise, what's the point? And I think in my sense, working in that supply development space is that in some industries, it's real, and in some, it really is just the tick box for the point exercise. And I see Fazila's nodding. Okay, guys, we need to move on. Let's have a look at the next question. How can manufacturing companies evaluate their suppliers' performance in these supplier development arrangements? Des, let's go to you first, and we'll go to Eustace after that, and then Fazila, I'm sure you'll also have some comments as well.
Thanks, Sherry. I hope I've understood this question properly. But, you know, supply performance is, it is something that you can say, well, okay, how do I actually assess my performance as a supplier? But today we live in a global village. There's international best practices, which we can always benchmark our companies on. Buyers and clients expect the best from our industry. And they say, yes, we want to basically localize, we want to procure from a local company. Of course, I can get exactly what I want from the international markets, but we got to start looking at import displacements in a big way. We are still importing too many things that we shouldn't be importing. And sure, there may be some decisions made elsewhere as to why this is happening, but it's time for our local industry to step up to the plate and start delivering to international standards as well. Good quality management systems, regular internal audits, and so forth are very, very important for us. You know, you're going to start seeing the quality of various products just dropping off. And working in the nuclear industry, it's really about quality and safety of the products, and the standards are exceptionally high. And those are things that do upskill an organization. It raises the standards of an organization and gets them up to speed. Customer satisfaction surveys are always very good for industry. You know, you've been supplying to a customer, go and have a chat with them and ask them, are you happy with our products? Are you happy with the quality of products? Where do you think we can improve? And all this stuff. Be brave enough to actually ask your customer, what do they feel about your products? If you are failing in various, like your non-conformance, if you are producing products that are of a substandard and things like that, realize that and capture it in your system before it moves over to your client. Because once you've lost a client, it's going to be very, very difficult to get back. You know, clients will always, the two clients that will always talk about you are the guy that you've delivered an exceptional product to and the guy that you have developed an absolutely awful product to. Those are the two guys that are going to always talk about you, you know. And also, one's got to look at your performance statistics. You know, you've got to manage your organization on performance. And how do you improve that? You know, a level statistic for the next 5 years is not good. You got to start looking at growth. Can you imagine earning the same salary for the next 10 years? You're going to be broke sooner or later. And organizations have got to constantly keep going and growing in their delivery, not only on the volume of work, but also the quality of service that they're actually delivering their clients. Thank you.
Thanks, Des. Eustace, I'm going to come to you because I know that Proudly South African has some programs that they're already working on around how we measure this. And then Fazila, if you can just think about, because I know, having heard your story before, that you had some quality issues over your journey. And how was that measured? How was that picked up? And what was your experience there? But we'll get to you. If we can go to you, Eustace, thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. So what we have done as Proudly South African is we have developed a tool. In fact, it's a tool that was initially developed by SAB, South African Breweries, for industry, for the private sector. But looking at transformation, we've just taken it and adopted it to also serve the localization purpose. And what it does is it enables corporates at any level, whether you're a retailer, whether you make products, you render services, corporates can then list themselves onto the platform. It's called MAP, and MAP stands for Market Access Platform. So you list yourself as a corporate, and then on the other hand, you then list and refer suppliers that you are using. So it's a perfect tool for enterprise development in that it helps those companies. I mean, let's take Fazila as an example because she's here with us. If Woolworths are using her, they can then list her on Market Access Platform and list the service that she's rendering or the product that they're buying from her, and even give her a rating to say it's based on the quality of a product, to give a 9 out of 10, based on lead times and her ability to deliver according to timelines. We rated this well, and there are a few things that are there, a few boxes that are available to every corporate to say, I'm referring a client And this is how I'm rating them for each of those boxes. And it then enables the next company that is also on map to see what kind of supply is there for a specific product. So you can go in and do a search. And let's give another example, furniture. So let's say Bank A buys office furniture from there, they refer their supplier, who's part of the supplier development program, they give them a rating. When Bank B comes, they do the same, they go in and they search for furniture suppliers. The ones with the highest ratings will come on top. And what we're doing is we are now limiting it to a search that will allow you to find local manufacturers. So you go in and you say furniture and you click localized supply. It will give you a supply that makes their products locally. You can click there, localized supply, and transformed. It will give you a list of suppliers that are making their products locally and are also transformed. So it helps for BE purposes. It helps you also to achieve your goals in terms of broad transformation, but also contributing to the growth of the economy outside of the scorecard. Because like was mentioned a few minutes ago, we want people to do supply development for the right reasons. The scorecard is one thing, but we need good corporate citizens who are committed to the cause. I mean, none of us are happy with the fact that we're sitting with 43% unemployment or over 40% unemployment if you look at the broad definition of unemployment. So 14 to 16 million people unemployed does not bode well for any economy and for the country. And so we through MEP, we are hoping to bring to the fore new suppliers who would have battled to be part of supply chains of big businesses. And also we are introducing those big businesses to companies that will help them. Even if you're doing for scorecard purposes, that system does help you for both for transformation and for localization. And so you are able to rate supply. Even if you did not refer a supplier, you use a supplier that you find on the system, you then also give them a rating. So everyone else who comes can see that the supply has been rated by this many people. This is the level at which they're rated. So you know whether to trust them or not. Because the biggest challenge for any corporate, which makes sense, is that if you're going to use a new supplier, when you've had your own traditional supplier who has helped you and has carried you over the years, is that you sometimes battle with the notion that maybe the new supplier might impact on you negatively because they don't deliver on time, the quality might not be right, and they might not understand your brief properly. So that rating gives an assurance to you that is going to use them for the first time, that someone else has tested them. They can be trusted, they do deliver, the quality is right, and the needs for which I want to buy this product or service will be satisfied. And that is what the market access platform is about. And anyone who wants to list on the market access platform can contact us, info@proudlysa.co.za. Whether you want to list there as a corporate or whether you want to list there as a supplier, contact us. We'll help you go through that vetting process because we need to vet you. So that when we put you in the system, because you're not necessarily referred now by a corporate, but you're coming through the Proudly SA system, we need to be confident that you will not go onto the system and fail to deliver. And also that, most importantly, we will not put you in the system as a local manufacturer, whereas the product is imported. Because there are people who bring in fully assembled products, finished products, change labels, and sell them on to consumers as if they are locally made. And so that is what we seek to do as Proudly South African, is to make sure that we vet you so that you end up on MEP and all the other market access platforms that we have, such that corporates that want to buy from you, who don't necessarily know you, can trust you.
Okay, thanks, Eustace. Fazila, I'm just going to add one more bit into the question that we posed to you. That rating system, did you have anything in the startup of your business where there was some kind of agreed rating? Because if I've had a bad experience, I might rate you really badly, but actually that's a one-off. And we all know people remember the last bad experience more than they remember the good. So was there any formalized process around rating linked to your story about where you did have some bad experiences and what you did with those? Thanks, Fazila.
Thank you, Shelley. I'd like to start off by saying that it's important to understand and manage both parties' expectation, because without that, you're going to end up having challenges because the one is expecting a certain quality and the other one is not. And it's important to understand that how you're going to monitor that, and also how you're going to address if you're off the target, how you're going to address getting back onto that target. In our case, for instance, Woolworths had a very clear understanding or clear path that if you have under X amount of customer complaints on a specific product, they will actually come and take that product off shelf. And that's exactly what happened. In our case, it was as little as 3 customer complaints. And I mean, at that stage, we were selling at 7 million turnover. So it was 3 customer complaints that we had that highlighted to Woolworths, and they came back and say, there seems to be a problem. And it took us quite a long time to fix that. But that comes back to what in our first discussion as well, about that commitment from both parties. If it weren't for Woolworths, they understood there was a clear definition. This is a new supplier. There is 3 customer complaints on a specific product. It's not a crisis yet, but it could potentially become a crisis coming in. So that comes back to that understanding and managing that expectation, and having an understanding that this is a new supplier. This is not just somebody we can shrug one side. This is where she needs our help the most. And it's also good to have regular meetings so that you can discuss those challenges from both entities, and not just from the one side. I don't know if that answers just broadly what it is to monitor that performances. And I think if I can just add one last thing, it's about having open discussions. It's one thing meeting, and if both parties are not open to say these are the challenges from both sides, it might be a problem.
Thank you, Fasila. And thanks for sharing that story, because I know, having heard you before, it was quite a tough time in your business. So thank you for sharing that. Let's move on. In South Africa, we have this Black Industrialist Program. And Eustace, I'm going to look to you to answer this one, please. So what supply development programs are in place to empower Black industrialists? And if you are able to answer, are there any specific objectives of those specific programs? Eustace, thanks.
So, thank you, Sherry. The DTIC, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, has packaged over time a basket of incentives that are aimed at supporting industry, especially to drive manufacturing and to reindustrialize the economy of the country. And so they then introduced a program that was specific to ensuring that we then start having a group of Black industrialists coming up. And so that is specific to those whose businesses are largely transformed, have majority Black ownership as per the definition of the BBBE Act. And the incentive basically looks at your value chains, look at what investment you are looking for, what it is you need to be invested in your company to help you continue making the products that you're going to make, continue manufacturing such that you can employ people. And it's largely a cocktail of instruments that are used. So part grants, part loans, and basically it's funding that is made available to you at levels where in some instances you have to match the incentive as well. So it's available through the DTIC, but some of the entities like the IDC, NEF, even CIFA, which is part of the small business for the smaller investments. So it's a cocktail of instruments that are combined to help Black industrialists. But obviously, one of the most important criteria that you will have to meet is the fact that the ownership has to be transformed and representative of that which is considered as Black as per the Act. And secondly, that you will have to demonstrate that you are making products, you are producing products locally. Not people bringing finished products, like I said earlier, because then it does not help the economy, because it's about re-industrializing the economy of South Africa. That's why it's the Black Industrialist Program. We're looking for industrialists. We're not looking for middlemen who are going to be tenderpreneurs, for lack of a better word. They get the purchase order, they bring in the product from outside, they deliver to whoever gave them the purchase order. But it's about those who are making products here, because then that way you know that there are jobs that are being created, that are jobs that will be retained over the long time. And I think the biggest thing for me with the Black Industrialist Program is the fact that we are now seeing a crop of entrepreneurs come up who would not have gone into manufacturing, would have gone the easy way, because manufacturing is hard. Going that route is hard. And so we are seeing people getting brave enough because there are programs there to support them. Because it's easy to just go into business, secure purchase orders, get the goods, deliver, and walk away. No overheads, nothing. You don't have to worry about salaries tomorrow and next month and the other month. There's no need for off-take agreements and etc. for a business to keep going. And so that is what it does. It's giving those who don't necessarily, who historically don't necessarily have the expertise, the experience, the funding, an opportunity to come into a space which they would have otherwise stayed away from.
Eustace, I'm going to just ask you one more question, and if you can't answer, it's okay. But just, I think we don't tell our success stories enough in South Africa. Are there any examples of success in manufacturing Black industrialists? Can you give us any examples?
Yeah, so I'll give you one of a company that is affiliated to Proudly South African, that is an industrialist program, and he's an entrepreneur who, when he tells a story, and I think it's a husband and wife team, and they started in the garage of the wife's father's house. You know, they started making sauces and condiments. In fact, that's how I learned the word condiment. They make those kind of things. And they started off there, they secured an offtake there, used that to as a base for them to invest in their startup operation, and then accessed the Black Industrialist Program, part grant, part loans, like I said. And they now have a factory in the east of Johannesburg. I think it's in Edenvale. What started off as a small operation in a garage. In fact, they started the first batch they made in the kitchen. We started off in the kitchen, in the father-in-law's kitchen, has now evolved into a full-blown business with proper offtakes. In fact, another member of Proudly South African buys from them, OBC, which is a retailer. OBC now buys its sauces from Makamisa. If you walk into OBC, you find the Makamisa. The name of the brand is Makamisa, by the way. You find the Makamisa sauces on the OBC shelves all over the country. And so it just shows you that because they could demonstrate capacity as a result of the benefit that they derived from the Black Industrialist Program, they are then trusted by a retailer as big as OBC to live on their shelves, because then as the demand arises, they're able to meet it through the factory that they have. But the biggest thing is the number of jobs. We had started as the two of them plus the father-in-law has now grown into a massive operation where, in fact, you don't even interact with them so much. When we have sessions like this, they even have a marketing and sales person who comes. So they were even able to beef up the team beyond the manufacturing side. There are other skills that are now brought into the business, and those are jobs as well. Those are jobs that are created across the different segments of their business. And so those schemes work. You just need to know that you need to know how to access them, but you need to know how to package your business.
I love that. Thank you, Eustace. I love to hear the success stories. And as I said, I think we need to tell them a whole bunch more. Okay, unless Fazila or Des has anything to add, let's move on. Okay, Des, do you want? You're on mute? Yeah.
It's a fantastic opportunity that has been developed, and I remember meeting with the GTI right in the beginning when the Black Industrialist Program was launched. I think it was a fellow called Takalani back then, and you know, it was early days, and what we've seen, and you know, looking, for example, at the construction sector, we've had the big five constructors that were out there. They were turning over typically 100 billion a year. We've lost that. And the big, you know, saying today in the industry is, well, the big five is now converted to the Agile 50, you know. And the Agile 50 is turning over 25% of that revenue. Of course, the economy is one of the bigger contributors to that revenue as well. But, you know, we don't see, and maybe I'm missing something, and I'm probably not talking in the right circles, but we're not seeing the Black Industrialist program coming in at a very big level. Now, if we look at some of our big infrastructure projects that we are looking at, you know, even some of these renewable projects are quite big. But if you look at some of the bigger projects where the contracts are enormous, you have to have the balance sheet, for example, to put up the bonds and guarantees. And we just don't have that capacity in the industry anymore. And you're going to have to start creating a club of companies to put together the right balance sheets to get that together. And then you've got the competition issues that you've got to be very cautious and careful about to make sure that you don't do that. So I'm very encouraged to see the way it is. But we need to start seeing some of the bigger companies coming forward under this initiative. And there are some fantastic organizations under fantastic leadership in the Black Industrialist program. We need to see them given the opportunity to grow and expand, because I'm looking for big companies, big guys at the moment. And I've engaged a lot of platforms for that. We desperately need that to happen.
Okay. Thanks for that, Des. And I think it's important. We need to make sure, I mean, we've kind of skirted a little bit around the funding issue, but at each of those stages of development, companies are going to need more and more funding to fund those projects. And Fazila, I think I remember you saying something similar, like as you grew, that you also had funding challenges. So I think making sure that the programs are supporting those businesses, not only at startup, but through the various phases of supplier development is also going to be key as we get there. But let's move on. If we can then, our last question that we need to look at is how do we ensure that we have the right and sufficient skills for suppliers in manufacturing and in specifically for this program or for this panel for supplier development programs. Des, I'm going to start with you because you raised skills earlier. So let's go to you first, and then we'll go around the members of the panel and see who's got.
Thanks, Sherry. Look, from a supplier development point of view, we obviously want to see our initiatives and ideas, you know, coming to fruition and growing organizations that are not only competent, but also are growing and employing more people, which is really one of the areas that that we are looking at. To sometimes take a bit of a chance and start getting more involved in more complex projects, you know. So next door to us in Mozambique, for example, we've got this big, huge LNG gas find and all the internationals around it. And honestly, the way we're looking at from a South African point of view, a lot of those doors are closed to our industry, which is unfortunate. And I'm talking about manufacturing, construction, engineering, material supply industries and things like that. The quality requirements are quite tough, understandably high. And South Africans don't want to take a chance. So we've got to start looking at reaching out a little bit more to make sure that we raise our level of skills. We need to, as I said earlier on, also develop a trade and artisan program for South Africa to international best practices. We're still very much in our own little world where our demands determine, you know, how we're going to skill our industries and so forth, you know. And we start upping that game to start competing with international companies, because at the moment we're having difficulty to do that. We've got to start this at a school level. You know, people at school needs to be, you know, educated on, hey, what does the real world look out there? And how do we actually engage it? How are we going to participate in it and be successful? And what I love about South Africa is it gives entrepreneurs an opportunity. the various support programs that are there for everybody does basically support the entrepreneur. If you've got a great idea, you can create some employment and opportunity for our industry. It's quite easy to garnish some support for that. But we've got to start that process very early in that stage. We also got to start paying skills a lot better. You know, I remember a time when I was an engineer, you know, secretaries were earning more than we do, you know, and sure, you have different evolutions and so forth like that, but we need to start paying the skills that we are so reliant on a lot better and give them a purpose, give them incentivize them to do better, you know, and deliver the products that we want to. Again, top quality management systems are definitely needed. Industry 4.0 is a great kicker on bringing the youth into our industries, bringing the youth, and the youth are then through the digital transformation are becoming more interested in engineering, construction, manufacturing, trade type jobs as well. We also got to raise the literacy of our country. And one of the things that I personally deal with in society is the epidemic of drugs in our society. You find your employees quite often are involved in a lot of these devastating effects of recreational drugs. And today they do a great job, actually mess up. It's insane to actually manage an organization and never mind grow an organization when you have a workforce that is stuck in this epidemic, you know. So that's really some of the challenges that we're seeing in industry to try and upskill and grow this. And, you know, we're seeing it where we are today. It doesn't look really that great, but hopefully through the post-COVID strategy that the government is now looking at, we are going to start seeing a kick in our industries and start opening the markets to new opportunities and new skills that are required.
Thanks, Des. Fazila, if I can come to you, as a supplier development program beneficiary, what skills did you need and what do you wish someone had taught you as part of that supplier development program?
I would say that you don't know anything. Go in with, if that was the one lesson that I've learned, is that if you think you know stuff, you actually don't know nothing. Every day you learn stuff. If I could just come back to what we need from a skill set point of view and how do we develop that, is that what I found is that from a management point of view, you end up, you've got a perfect person doing a job perfectly, and you end up not wanting to move that person. And management needs to be mindful that if you want to uplift the skills in South Africa, you need to sometimes push employees out of their little comfort zone. And similarly, because you know a person can do a good job, you tend to not want to let that person move on to another department, for instance. So it's just those kind of things that you need to be mindful of. I just want to expand quickly on what Des was saying about we need to stop being scared. Teachers and parents need to teach kids that it's okay to dream. The minute you start dreaming about something, that's the minute that you're going to start finding solutions to be able to achieve that dream and to think bigger than what we're thinking now. And it's important that we need to get internship. As much as we've got the education out there and you've got the degree or you've got the diploma, you have to have internship, and we need to get that up and running as quickly as, and companies need to explore that much more, because I find the minute you get people involved in understanding how business runs, their minds open. We've got 3 students here that we actually pay a stipend to, and not getting any funds to be able to do that. But if I see how they have grown from the the first day that they've walked in here with them later and what they're doing now. It's amazing, and that's what we need to do, and understand there's a good chance that somebody else is going to come up and offer them a better employment, hopefully. And sadly, to stand there and understand that you're letting your child walk out by the door after you've put in so much effort, and hopefully start training up the next lot that could come around. And funds should be made available a little bit more maybe on that, because now currently we're funding it ourselves. But I think it's important. We had a lot of support getting where we are. And if I'm not going to train and give the opportunity to people that's got the diploma or the degree, but has got no work experience, we're not going to move forward as a country.
Thanks, Fazila. So Des, you spoke about technical skills and like the artisan, world-class technical skills. Fazila, you've spoken quite a lot about business skills and entrepreneurship, but Des, you also touched on that. Eustace, without trying to put you on the spot, do you have any comments around like the soft skills, power skills, all those personal skills, whatever we're going to call that terminology, the World Economic Forum says are so important? How do we bring that into supplier development programs as well? And then also your thoughts on what Fazila and Des have said.
Okay, I think Fazila and Des have touched on important skills, but I think more than anything, and this is in the context of our conversation around supplier development, is the ability to sell yourself. You must be able to sell yourself, package yourself, branding in the world in which I operate. I see it daily. It's how you brand yourself. It's how you package your offering, and it's how you take your product into the market. It's your route to market channels. It's all of those combined make a big difference. Because if you're going to take a product out into the market and it's not properly branded, then you're targeting a certain segment of the market, because you must know who you're targeting as well. And you're targeting a segment of the market. I mean, Fazila, you can talk better about this. If it's a Woolworths client, remember Woolworths is about quality. It's about brand, it's about top end. And so your branding and your packaging must talk to the top end. If you're targeting a lower segment of the market, you then have to package it accordingly, because then it also talks to the costs, which you're able to recover from that packaging. So, I mean, we have a company that affiliates with us, and the guy's name is Laduma. The brand is called Matrosa, so it's Matrosa by Laduma. And he is targeting the higher end. He is pitching the prices of his products, the quality and everything else, the look and feel, at the same level as the expensive brands, clothing brands that people buy from Italy and France and all of these places that are renowned for high end. And so that's how he's pitched his product, and that's the quality that he's delivering. And that is how even the brand itself, when you interact with the brand, you get a feel. You get a feeling that you are buying at a high-end product. And for me, that's the skill you need to develop over time. A supply development program sometimes have those elements, especially where it's an enterprise and supply development program, because that enterprise element where they don't necessarily want to buy from you brings with it a whole host of skills, from financial management and bookkeeping to marketing and sales to packaging and branding to how you take your product to market. So I would encourage those who want to benefit from these programs to look for ESD programs, enterprise and supply development program, where corporates develop you with the intention of buying from you. Supply development usually focuses on what is it that we want from you, so that we can take your product and buy from you. And a lot of times they take long. I mean, I've been exposed to one of my favorite programs in the country, is a program by Tsoho-san called Tsoho Entrepreneurs. And Tsoho Entrepreneurs I think it's a whole 12-month program. But at the end of the 12 months, when you look at what they go through throughout the 12 months period, and to a point where they even compete at the end, in the actual business, to say, based on where your business was when you came in and where your business is at the end of the program, looking at what we have taught you and which of those elements that you have learned, you have introduced into your business, and what the result was. There is a winner. There's a Tsoho Entrepreneur of the Year award. So you can see it's a deliberate effort to make sure that they give you skills, but that you use those skills and those elements that you are learning you introduce them into your business. So that for me is what I think corporates out there rolling out programs should look at the combined enterprise and supply development program.
Thanks, Eustace. I think linked to that, I mean, one of the upcoming skills that World Economic Forum talks about is something called storytelling. And I think if you get storytelling right, you can sell your brand, you can sell yourself, you can sell your business. And maybe that's the link that we're missing, you know, to kind of bring this all together. Because if I have the technical skill, I have the dream, but I can't tell the story, then how am I going to sell myself and how am I going to sell my business? So yeah, thank you for that, Eustace. I think you kind of closed that off nicely. Okay, so we have taken a full hour, can you believe it? I'd like to kind of go around the panelists and just get some closing thoughts from you all. And if you can focus it on what would make supplier development programs successful in your minds, and you can summarize or you can add something new. And if we can kind of limit that to about 2 minutes each. Fazila, let's start with ladies first. We'll start with you, and then we'll go Des, Eustace, if that's okay.
I think it's important. I think I've mentioned it before. You need to have a target. You need to have a clear idea of what you want, and understand the expectation from both sides, and find that right partner that fits with you and that you share that same expectations, you share the same ideology, and because if you're on different wavelengths, it's not going to work. So from where I sit, I think that's probably the most important thing, is to find the right partner that you understand one another and understand the clear expectation, what both are expecting out of this relationship. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Fazila. Des?
Yeah, I think Fazila touched on something earlier on about people having a dream. And the question really is around enterprise development is how to translate or transfer that dream into reality, into a business, into a product and a livelihood for many, which is really what we dream about as well. There is just so much technology out there on how to do that. Funding alone is not enough. You can fund the greatest dreams, but if there isn't a know-how on how to convert those dreams into reality, you're just going to throw a lot of money away. And I think it's very important that we don't have the blind leading the blind. And Eustace also mentioned an entrepreneurs program as well, which is quite successful. One's got to learn from a lot of other industry leaders out there, and there's got to be probably a mentorship program, you know, where successful people who have championed very successful organizations can start sharing these ideas and platforms. You know, your social media has also got a lot of that. Today, you can learn anything. You can achieve anything that you want. It's just being willing to look and discover on how to do it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Des. Eustace?
Thank you, Sherry. I don't have anything new to add except to say that in our context as a buy local campaign, it's about access to markets, broadening market opportunities for those who are brave enough to go into business. Like I said earlier on, being in business is tough. Fazila gave us those examples. Des gave us his experiences. And so I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurs because it's hard. And so for those who are sitting with the procurement opportunities, where you're buying without giving consideration as to where the product comes from, whether it's linked to your preferential procurement program, your enterprise and supply development program, give consideration to where the product comes from. Because where the product comes from is where you're sending the money. That's where you're making contribution to the growth of that economy. That's where you're creating jobs. That's where you're growing the tax base. So for me, an enterprise and supply development program should start changing towards having a strong sense of localization, where as a supply development program, we are saying we're not just buying from you, but we want to see you making the product locally. We want to help you with capital, etc. I mean, one of the programs, I know I only have 2 minutes and I'll wrap up quickly, but one of the programs that I've seen that is quite a big success is where the program, there's the enterprise and supply development program includes interest-free loans, because that interest-free loan, that interest that you would have accumulated from that loan, becomes the benefit that is accrued to the beneficiary, and that is what you can claim against your scorecard, etc. So if capital is a challenge for you to bring in new entrants, look at things like that. I have the benefit of going through a lot of these programs at Proudly South African on a day-to-day basis, because that is where our focus is, and so that's what I would encourage. Have a strong sense of capital in the form of interest-free loans, etc. And that's my contribution.
Thanks, Eustace. I mean, just to summarize very quickly, there's been a few kind of key takeouts for me in this discussion. And I think the first is the dream bit. Thank you, Fazila, for the word. But I think it's important that both the supplier and the buyer both have that dream, because it's about more than the tick box exercise. Fazila, you referred to it, but I'd like to kind of call it dream on both sides. So the supplier needs to have the dream about the product and about their vision of their business in future. But the buyer or the corporate, the place where the demand sits, needs to have a dream about the good of South Africa, the manufacturing multiplier, the employment creation opportunities, all of those good things that come out of manufacturing. And those dreams need to be aligned. And Fazila, you spoke about this quite a lot, about how do we align those dreams and how do we make sure we both have the right objectives and that we're aligned in those objectives to deliver in a long-term relationship. And I think that's key. It came up a few times as well, but this is a long-term thing. Supply development programs are not a one-year program and then you move on to your next program. It's a long-term partnership. And Fazila, you used the word, I think, right up front around it's a marriage. And the contracting should be like a marriage, but the value sets and the dreams should also be like a marriage. And that contracting and the measurement is also important to keep both parties linked, aligned as we go through. And then I think lastly for me, the takeout around the skill set, it's about the right skills at the right, as your supplier development program businesses grow, they're going to need different things from you. At some point, startup, they're going to need funding. At various points, they're going to need funding. At startup, maybe they need entrepreneurship development skills. As they grow a bit, maybe, Fazila, to your point, they need management development skills. And what are those skills? And then as they get even bigger, maybe they need technical skills. You know, as they grow, different things are going to come into play. So let's make sure that as we're supporting our supplier development beneficiaries, that it links to our key purpose as business, and it links to our long-term business strategy, and we're doing the tick box of the points, but it's not just a tick box, and that we're growing the economy and growing those businesses and transforming the economy, which is a key part of what BEE is meant to do. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, Fazila, Des, and I think it's been a fantastic conversation, and I really, really appreciate your input. Thanks, everybody.